If you'd face the clerk and be sworn, please, sir. Everybody be seated.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. All right, have a seat. Slide at the microphone, please, sir. May I proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, or afternoon, sir. Please
Afternoon.
introduce yourself to the jurors.
I'm Alton Ranew. I'm from Sneed, Florida.
And Mr. Ranew, are you currently employed?
No, sir, I'm retired.
What are you retired from?
The Florida Fish and Wildlife.
Okay. What did you do for Florida Fish and Wildlife?
Sir?
What did you do for Florida Fish and Wildlife?
Oh, I was a wildlife officer that patrolled the waters and the lands of the state of Florida, mainly Jackson County, was my assignment.
Okay. And how long were you employed in that capacity?
31 years.
Okay. By my calculation, when did you retire?
May 12th, 2012.
Okay.
Correction, I'm sorry. That was May 31st, 2012.
Okay. So back in December of 2000, you were employed?
Yes.
Okay. In your capacity there at FWC, Florida Wildlife Commission, did you become involved in the search for Mike Williams?
Yes.
How is it you became involved in that?
I was contacted by my supervisor that we had a search going on Lake Seminole and to come to work on the Sunday morning of December 17th, I believe it was.
Okay. My understanding, the initial call out was you weren't part of the initial response, correct?
No, sir, I was off duty that day.
Okay. And so you became involved on December 17th, 2000?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your role in all that?
We had to take a boat and go out and just search the waters for the missing person.
Okay. Did you assume any kind of like lead role in that or anything like that?
I wasn't lead. I was basically, I was there every day and had the boat and done the operating of the boat and there were several boats and other officers out there as well.
Okay.
The lieutenant was the lead officer.
All right. I know sometimes lieutenants are lead, but you're the one that's taking charge and doing all the work. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, basically, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, you talked about a lot of boats. You had your own boat.
We started out with our kicker boat, which has the motor on the back of it. It hangs down in the water. And there's so many stumps in this area that we had to go and borrow what is called a Go Devil boat that has a long shaft prop that will kick up out of the water. And it's kind of like a lawnmower motor on the boat, but it has a long shaft. So we had to use that because it would maneuver between the stumps.
I think you said you were out there every day.
Basically, every day of the search.
Okay. And were you the only person out there, or were there more people?
Oh, there was quite a few people.
Were they all law enforcement?
No, sir.
Okay. Were there other law enforcement officers?
There was several other law enforcement out there as well.
Were they all FWC, or were they from other agencies?
Most was FWC. There was some Jackson County sheriff's deputies there as well.
At some point, were there any kind of dive teams that were utilized?
We had a couple of divers that done some diving for us. Yes.
At some point, did whenever you first arrived on the 17th, how would you classify the search? Was it for recovery purposes? Were you looking for somebody? What was going on?
It was looking for a missing duck hunter at that time that just was missing, and that's all we knew.
Okay. At some point, how long were you out there doing that search?
The period of time was about 44 days on the primary search, and then it started breaking down. And due to the fact that I live right there by the lake and patrol that area every day, I was assigned to, when I went on the water, to go to that area and see if I could find anything, or, if there was anything developed.
Were there any kind of aerial platforms, helicopters? I don't think they had drones back then, but anything like that being used?
Yes, there was the county helicopter, our FWC helicopter, several fixed-wing aircraft flying.
Okay. What is a fixed-wing aircraft? What does that mean?
Airplane, like a Cessna.
Okay, regular old airplane?
Yes.
Okay. Did you do any kind of documentation that talk about, well, let me back up a little bit. When you say you did a search, is it just kind of go out every man for themselves and just look, or how do you organize that kind of search?
No, actually, we did grid searches. We would go across the body of water, say like this courtroom, we would go across to that wall, back to that wall, and only move over 4 to 6 foot at a time in the beginning. And then we'd come back and isolate that to a certain area, and we actually put ropes out from one stump to another and would poles the first couple of days. And then after, I think after the first night, we had a camera come in and put on the poles with a monitor, and we would monitor the bottom as the guy would work the pole on the bottom. And we used that camera, and I think it was maybe second or third day we had 2 cameras, so there was 2 boats with 2 individual cameras working grid lines for search.
And you said that initially you're looking for a missing person. Did that, I assume that initially you were hoping to find somebody alive?
We were. That's our goal, is to find them alive, trying to locate them. Maybe we just didn't know what was going on. Maybe we could find them in an island. A boat might have turned over on a stump, and we might find them standing on the island going, hey, I'm over here, but this didn't happen.
Never found anything. At some point, did the search turn into a recovery operation?
Well, it never did have a recovery. We just searched the area, intensively until we couldn't find anything. So I say couldn't find anything. We found some articles, but
Okay, we'll get to those in just a minute. You talked earlier about the polling. What is that about?
well, I went to the hardware store and I purchased some PVC pipe, 1.5 inch PVC pipe, and 14 to 16 foot long. And we would pole along down on the bottom, touching the bottom and moving every few feet with pole. And then we would hit stumps and logs and stuff. And
But what is the purpose of doing this polling?
well, in my experience, if you're looking for a body that might have fallen out of a boat and it's on the bottom, it's kind of like a pillow. When you punch it, it won't spring back on you, but it'll kind of get spongy. The bottom will be mucky and it'll go through. You can tell the difference once you've done it several times. If you hit a limb, and the limb will spring back on you, so you tell the difference. And at one time we did think that we had something. I think a gentleman said, I've got something over here, but we tried it ourselves. Law enforcement tried it, and I was thinking, well, it's a log, but we'll put a diver down, and the diver found that it was a treetop.
Okay. That particular spot you're talking about there, did y'all take any efforts to mark those with bamboo sticks or something along those lines?
Yes, we marked it with one of those poles.
During the course of this search, did you make any notes about search patterns and things that were found?
Yes, sir, I did.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Showing you the previously marked state exhibit number 2 for identification purposes, without showing this to the jury, actually take a look at it, please.
It seems to be my drawing of the search pattern with the K9.
Okay. And Your Honor, this time I would move state exhibit number 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
State Exhibit 2 will be admitted without objection.
Permission to publish?
You may.
A whole lot of arrows, it looks like, that are drawn around these. What do those indicate?
That is the pattern that we took with the dogs. And can you scroll that down to the top where I can review the, my notes there. Dotted line is the route that we're taking. The half arrow represents the first loop. The full arrow is the second loop, and the solid line, the arrow represents the third loop. Okay, good.
When you talk about loops, what do you mean?
What happens when you have a canine dog, and I'll say this, I was trained in canine while in the Game Commission.
Okay.
So I was one of the first 10 canine officers, to give you a little background. But the dog we had was, the first dog out there was from the Northwest Florida Search and Rescue Team. And on number 1, on those half arrows, we started on the downwind side. The wind was coming in. If you see the sign where it says wind, the wind was coming out of the northeast. So we started on the southwest corner, or basically on that shoreline, where if there had been a body or anything there, the scent. Okay, thank you. We started from the landing, working around, start here, and the dogs kind of indicated on those little X's right here, they indicated something was there.
Let me stop you right there. You said the dogs indicated something was there. What kind of dogs are we talking about? I mean, there's narcotic dogs, there's cadaver
They're
dogs.
search and rescue cadaver dogs,
So they're trained to pick up what?
human scent.
Okay.
And
is it human scent, as in live human scent, decaying human scent, or all the above?
these dogs will track you on the ground, and they're also trained pretty intensively with cadaver training
Okay.
as well.
Well, let me pause you real quick. We'll get back to the dogs in just a second. Up here at the top says landing. What is it with the star? What is that?
That's a small dirt landing area, probably 100 foot by, say 100 by 100. And then there's grass all out in there, but there's a little slip that you can slide a boat in right there.
All right. And I understand from Officer Morris that a Bronco was found. Is that landing right there where the Bronco was found?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think there's another landing down here. What's that?
That is a little road that comes off the highway that goes in there to another small slip. And it's not as good as this one. It's kind of growed over, but people will slip their duck boats in there sometimes and just make a small trail through the grass.
I think there's some sort of like game reporting station or something like that along this road somewhere. Where's that at?
About there on the west side of the road,
Okay, so on the other side of the road from that landing.
right straight across from that landing.
All right, so let's get back, let's look at this. It says shallow water here, and I notice you have a couple of trees that are denoted on here. What are those for?
Well, it's documenting that this is, anywhere from 3 to 4 foot water at the time, and then you get on down. The trees are old oak trees that were flooded in, and all the leaves are dead off of them. And then those are trees there, and there's a tree there, and this area here is a deeper hole that's created there in that slough. It gets 10, 12, 14 foot sometimes.
Let's stop right there. What is a slough?
A slough. That's the backwater coming off the lake, and it's got weeds and islands and grass around it, and it just feeds through the lake.
And it's kind of like a murky water type area?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and you said that you had all the X's here. Are these, and what was the significance of these X's?
Basically, where the dogs alerted, gave some kind of alerts. The trainer would know their alert pattern, so the dog alerted there. We made a circle, come back around, and try to make another run by it, which is there. And the dog alerted again. And then the second run and third run. And you go out of the pattern to let the dog relax. And once you get out of the pattern and he relaxes, you bring him back in. And if the scent pool, if there's anything there, with the wind, it could go this way, and the wind could change it. It would move around a little bit, but and the dog would alert in that particular area.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier about an area that you marked with the bamboo or whatever it is where there's had the alert. Where was that on there?
This tree is not there anymore. It's rotted down. But from that tree out to the south of that tree, about 25 feet, there's a still there today is a white PVC pipe marking the area of that deepest hole.
And you mentioned it had been marked by bamboo in that very point. Did you at some point change the bamboo out for a PVC pipe to mark that location?
No, the bamboo that was used there basically was put inside the PVC pipes
Okay.
to stabilize them. They were so long, they were flexible, so we put bamboo, like green cane poles, inside, and we capped both sides of the PVC.
All right. And you said there's still a PVC pipe there today?
Yes, sir. There's one there.
During that extensive search that you just talked about, was there anything found initially?
I didn't find it, but another officer found the boat with the gear in it, and I wasn't there at that time.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to observe the boat?
Not at first, not when they took it out of the water and all that. I wasn't there.
Okay. Were you aware where they did find it?
Yes, they pointed it out to me.
Okay. And actually, if I can go back to your map here. Is that what we're looking at right here?
Yes, from the landing, there's some grass. This little U-shaped thing here represents basically grass, and there's the boat right there. And actually, off the grass right there, if that had been straightened out a little bit, the boat was between this landing and that landing, in that area, up against the grass, cattails.
Were there any other items that were found?
During the first few weeks, I found a cooler and a coffee mug in the area near the boat, but it was kind of up in this grass up in here.
Did that turn out to be another, not related to this?
It wasn't related to this search. A gentleman came to the landing the third day of the search and said he had turned his boat over out in front of the landing, and he described the cooler and the coffee mug, and it was returned to him.
Okay. What about a hat or booties or anything like that? Were any of those items, anything?
Yes, sir. The hat was found on the 10th morning of the search.
And where was that found?
We put in here at the landing, or up at the other landing, come around and started our grid. And before I even got to here, the hat was off of that tree and over in the shallow water near this tree. Between that tree and the grass, it was placed right in there.
Counter questions?
You bet.
Show you the previously marked state's exhibit number 3A, composite 3A, B, and C. Come on maps, take a look at those items.
Okay.
Those maps accurately depict the area that we're talking about and the locations just from satellite imagery.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, this time we will state composite 3A, B, and C.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
To be admitted without objection.
Looking at this first map, I think this is just to kind of tell us where everything is. Lake Seminole up here, and that's approximately how far from Tallahassee Drive was. Quantitative Drive over here.
It's about 55, 60 miles, somewhere in that range.
A little bit closer look at the west side of the lake. That'd be the landing where the boat found in relation to each other.
Yes.
And then photograph number C. Again, the initial landing where the Bronco was found, where the boat was found, with trees that we've talked about, as well as that ranger station we talked about.
Yes.
Next, I can approach and show you today's composite exhibit number 4, A through M.
May I approach?
Take a look at those, please, Josh Schoeninger. Those photographs accurately depict the search area as well as personnel and other items.
Yes, sir, it does.
Now, Commissioner, I move state exhibit, probably exhibit 4, A through M in the evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Be admitted without objection.
Permission to vote.
You may.
Mr. Ranew, what are we looking at here?
That's basically the landing area that we're talking about. The water is quite low, so it's muddy. At the landing, and we're looking southeast, and you can see the larger tree in the background here, and then a little bit further south of there, kind of the dark spot right here. That was basically where the pole is.
All right, in this area right here, is this where the same kind of area that the same area that the Bronco was found at?
Yes, just back this side of the landing.
What are we looking at there?
Basically looking at the same area, a little bit on the east, a little bit northeast of the search area.
And I think that the previous big tree you pointed out is right here, so we're kind of looking at that, you'd be looking out towards the left.
Yes, sir. We're looking a little bit, that's the search. I say search area, this is all the search area, but the main area that the dogs alerted on was down here. This is just a little bit north of that other photo.
And I believe this is a little bit farther to the left.
Yes.
Same view, appears to be a helicopter in this one, that was part of the search,
Yes, sir, it was.
as well as the boat.
Yes, sir.
What are we looking at here? Photograph 4E. Appears to just be some grass area.
I'm thinking that might be the big tree. I'm not real sure. It looks like that photo might have been taken from from a vessel or something, but due to the weeds along the roadway, would be hard to get to that point.
Photo 4F appears to be blurry, but are those the PVC pipes we're talking about?
Yes, sir, it is. And that's the large tree there that we're talking, the larger tree. All these are down now, but I think it's that pipe that's left.
More photos of the area with the stumps that we're talking about?
Yes, sir. Looking kind of northward, that's the landing area.
Is that the boat that was found?
It appears to be the same boat.
In my understanding, you were not there when it was found, however, you were there afterwards.
Afterwards, I wasn't there when it was in that position.
Just for clarification, is this the boat that was found?
I believe it is,
Okay, but it was not on the trailer initially, it was found and put on the trailer by the law enforcement officer?
yes.
What is this? Is that the go we were talking about?
Yes, sir, that's a small engine with a long shaft and the props down here.
Photograph 4L. Inside the boat. And 4M. Depict the way the boat was found, the items inside the boat?
I think so, sir. I wasn't there when it was recovered.
Okay. So that initial search, I think you described earlier, went on for 44 days, correct?
Yes, sir.
At that point, did you have any reason to believe that this would be turned into a homicide investigation?
No, sir.
The items that we've talked about, the Bronco, the boat, and everything like that, they weren't collected as evidence for that reason, correct?
No, sir.
And for clear, you never found Mike Williams in the missing boater, correct?
No.
Later that summer, did you have an occasion to get called back out to that location?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What happened there?
A friend of mine, a local fisherman as well, he contacted me and said that he had found a set of waders floating in the area that we had been searching.
Okay. And what did you do with that information?
I contacted the sheriff's office with the investigator, Jeff Johnson, and he came over and he and I went out and retrieved the evidence of the waders at that time.
All right. Were there any further searches and other pieces of evidence that were found?
A diver came in and dove up a jacket with a flashlight.
Okay. Anything else? Anything found inside of the waders or the flash or the jacket?
Yeah, the waders had a fanny pack that was strapped around the waistband with 15 steel shot shells in them, and I think an Arkansas hunting license.
And that Arkansas hunting license, did that say it have a name on it?
Had Mike Williams' name on it.
And when was that?
That was the first or second day of June of that same year.
Okay, so about 6 months later?
Yes. Actually, it was like June of 2001.
Okay. All right. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may?
Gentlemen, as previously marked for identification purposes, states composite 5A through E, without showing those to the jury. I need to look at them. You recognize those items?
Yes,
What do those items appear to be?
that's the jacket and hunting license.
These items that were found approximately 6 months after the church,
Yes.
the search that you just described?
Yes,
Did they fair and accurately depict those items?
yes.
Around this time, it states composites 5A through E and evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted without objection.
Commissioner Bowe?
You may.
Thank you. Paragraph 5A, what are we looking at here?
That would be the jacket that was found by the diver.
B.
That's the same jacket that's turned, laid on the tailgate there with upside down or inside out.
5C, same jacket again.
It's the inside of the same jacket.
5D,
That is the hunting license.
and
Same
5E.
hunting license, folded up.
These items that we just talked about, were they seized in evidence?
Yes, sir.
Again, at that time, nobody believed it to be a homicide investigation. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And finally, you talked a little bit about the multiple landings that we, as well as the PVC pipe that can still be seen today. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Showing the previously marked for identification purposes, State Exhibit 6A through C. I should take a look at those items, please. What are these items?
That's the photos of the small landing across from the check station and the search area on the water, and the small landing that we where we staged up the search at, and where the Bronco was found.
Okay. And they fair and accurate depict those locations?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time we would state composite 6A through C in evidence, please.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted without objection.
We'll look at 6B first. Which location is that?
That's the area where the Bronco was found and the small boat landing, dirt landing.
And that photograph 4A, that's the Bronco at that landing, correct, on the day that it was found?
Yes.
You say 4,
4A, yes.
so we're going back to some earlier ones.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1A, I apologize, 1A. Photograph 6C looks out over that area. Is that the search area that exists today?
Yes, sir.
I notice there's a little white thing right here. What is that?
That's the pole that we left out there. Or at the time, we were using them for search
Still there today?
and markers.
Even after, this is actually after the hurricane, is it not?
Yes, it's just, that's the, well after the hurricane there, I believe.
Yes. And then finally, I'm going to show you 6A. What is this at? What's that?
That's the small landing across from the check station. There's a highway just this side at the bottom of the photo, and across the road is a check station for the management area. It's just a small dirt landing.
All right. It looks like it's halfway decent distance over to the water. But how far is that about?
Well, from that point of the landing and just a little bit at maybe a 45-degree angle is the search area right in there.
And how far from where the road is to the water area?
80 yards maybe.
Almost a football field?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Ranew, the area that the search located, where y'all performed the search, is that a common area for duck hunters?
Yes, sir.
During your time for patrolling there, had you ever run into Mike Williams before?
Yes, I have.
Are you familiar with, well, let me ask you this. You're familiar with the term duck blind?
Yes.
What is a duck blind?
A duck blind can be several different things. They can go out on the bulrush, on the cattails, and build up the cattails to cover themselves. And another way to do a duck blind is a floating duck blind, like you could build it on your boat and cover your boat where you can hide in there.
Did Mike Williams have any duck blinds out in there that he used on a regular basis?
I've checked them in the cattails before, and they didn't have a duck blind per se. You can pull in the cattails certain ways that they just make you a natural blind.
Okay. And did Mike Williams utilize that natural blind area in order to hunt ducks on a regular basis?
Several times, yes.
No further questions.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ranew.
Yes, sir.
You had indicated that when the items were found in June of 2001, I think we saw in the photographs, that someone was there holding them with rubber gloves on. Who was the person holding those items?
I'm not sure who was actually holding the items. I know that Sergeant Jimpsy Owens was our investigator with the Game and Fish Commission, and then there was an investigator with the Sheriff's Office as well, and I don't know if they were together and did that or who took the photos.
When those items were seized into evidence, where are they now?
I don't know that they were seized into evidence. I think they were turned back to the family. I don't know really that answer, sir.
All right, I apologize. I may have misunderstood when you'd said earlier the answer to that question. The boat and that was found at the scene, where did that boat go?
It was turned back over to the family,
Whose family?
to Mike Williams' family.
Do you know that for certain, or could it have been turned over to someone else?
I was told that it was turned over to the family, and that's the word they used, the family, and I'm assuming back to his family.
You described in Exhibit 2 the area where the canine search. When was this canine search with the dogs conducted as it relates to December 16th, 2000? Was it done the same day, the next day?
I'm not sure of the date, sir, but it was within 2 weeks, or within the first week and a half or 2 weeks.
And the dogs alerted, but what did they find? What did they alert to?
There was nothing that we found. There was nothing there that we found or could see, but they would react. And even one was in front of the boat and started sniffing and walked down the gunnel of the boat to the back, sniffing the water. And we searched that area with the cameras and with the poles and everything as well, and there was nothing that we could find.
And if I understand correctly, based on where the landings were on the western side of Lake Seminole, were the dogs run over the dry land areas where the boat may have been pulled out, or where the Bronco was?
I'm not sure of that, sir.
When you observed the boat, did the dogs ever get run over the boat?
I'm not sure. I didn't witness that.
You said you'd seen Mike Williams before out at Lake Seminole.
Yes.
Did you ever see Brian Winchester prior to December 16th, 2000?
Yes.
How often would Brian Winchester hunt out at that area?
I checked them several times. I knew both of them, and I knew when they come in to the landings, I would check them, check their boat and their keel or whatever, their limit, and their license.
Prior to December 16th of 2000, about how many times would you have encountered Brian Winchester hunting at the Lake Seminole area?
I didn't really count the time, but I would estimate 3 to 5 times.
Did you ever encounter Brian Winchester and Mike Williams hunting together for ducks prior to December 16th of 2000?
A few years before, and maybe that year as well,
So maybe one time?
maybe one time, yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect. Freeman. Talking about the dogs, just for clarification, they pick up on both scent of live people as well as deceased, correct?
Yes,
So if you'd run them over the boat that people had been in, there's no way to tell which alert they're doing, correct?
that's right.
So they would have alerted somebody who was in the boat, but you can't tell whether that's a deceased.
Not unless you do what we call scent discrimination, and that wasn't available.
Okay. Wasn't available at that time?
No.
Okay. No further question.
All right. Any juror have a question of this witness? All right. If not, you may step down. We need to keep him further.
Your Honor, he will be subject to recall, but he can go back
Okay.
to this.
All right, you can go back to business, be subject to recall. You are under the rule of sequestration, so don't discuss the case with anyone. Call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, stay with Tully Sparkman.
You'd face the clerk and be sworn, please, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Have a seat. Slide up the microphone, please, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello,
Can you please introduce yourself to the jurors?
my name is Tully Sparkman.
Okay. And Mr. Sparkman, are you employed?
Yes, I am.
Where do you work?
I work for the State Attorney's Office.
And what do you do with the State Attorney's Office?
I'm an investigator.
How long have you been an investigator with the State Attorney's Office?
I have been an investigator for nearly 13 years, going on 13.
Okay. Prior to that, did you have any prior law enforcement experience?
Yes, for 5 years I was employed with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
And what were your duties with Florida Wildlife?
I was an law enforcement officer.
Okay. And then what are your duties at the State Attorney's Office?
I'm an investigator. I work in the Jefferson County office.
And as an investigator with the State Attorney's Office, what kind of things do you do?
We assist the attorneys prepping cases for trial, interviews, locating witnesses, stuff such as that.
As an investigator, are you also called upon to assist other law enforcement agencies in conducting an investigation?
Yes, there's oftentimes we do that.
In that capacity at the State Attorney's Office, did you become involved in the disappearance of Mike Williams?
Yes, I did.
How is it that you became involved?
I was assigned the case when I came to the Tallahassee office in, I believe it was around 06, 07, around 07, I believe.
Any particular reason you were assigned? How many investigators are at the State Attorney's Office?
We have a total of about 10. I came in and kind of inherited it from a person that had left.
Okay. And who was that person?
That was Ronnie Austin.
You mentioned earlier that you had been involved with FWC prior to that. Is that part of the reason you were assigned this case?
That's another reason for it. I had some background in some of the initial stuff going on with the case. Not that I was involved in it, but FWC was involved with a lot of it, so I had some knowledge of what they would have been doing and how that would have been handled.
And just to be clear, you weren't involved in the search back in December of 2000 for Mike Williams with FWC, correct?
No, I was not.
Okay, you just kind of knew who the players were?
Yes.
All right. How is it or why is it that the State Attorney's Office became involved in this investigation?
Just another set of eyes, somewhat of a liaison to the other law enforcement officers in the case to keep us in the loop and everybody working together as a team.
Okay. And when was it that you became involved?
It was around 07, somewhere in that range.
Now, whenever Mike Williams first went missing, it was classified as a missing person. At some point, did that change and become a suspicious death
Yes.
or suspicious circumstances?
Yes.
Why is that?
Just the background surrounding it. I don't know how much to go into it, but as a fish and wildlife officer, one of the things that we recovered bodies from the water often, and I've never been to one that the body did not float or was not recovered. So, that became suspicious in itself, the fact that we never had a body in the water there.
Okay. Were there any other circumstances there that had happened between the disappearance of Mike Williams and 2007 that also gave rise to suspicious circumstances?
During that time, there were several, some of the stuff was the evidence that was found, who found it. There was a lot of that stuff that was, there were missing parts of time in people's alibis. So there were several things that were suspicious, to say the least.
Okay. And let's talk, if we can, I assume when you came in 2007, did you also go back and review the prior investigations and other things that had happened?
Yes.
Did you learn who people were as it relates to this?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start talking about that.
Okay.
Mike Williams, who is Mike Williams?
Mike Williams was an adjuster for Clay Ketchum. I think it was Clay Ketchum. It's where he worked. Married to Denise Merrill at the time. Winchester.
So Mike Williams is married to Denise Williams.
Yes.
Did you become familiar with a person by the name of Brian Winchester?
Yes, I did.
Who was Brian Winchester?
Brian was married to Kathy Winchester. They were friends with the two families were friends.
Okay. At some point prior to 2007, did you become aware that Brian Winchester and Denise Williams had become an item and got married?
Yes.
Did that factor into your into the suspicious nature of all this?
Yes, it was a suspicious matter, of course, yes.
Okay. In your involvement, I know you talked about you went back and reviewed certain things. Did you take any efforts to try and conduct your own investigation, find any kind of records?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What steps did you take?
We looked into financial records, phone records. We did other interviews when we would get leads on different aspects. We followed it to wherever it would lead, picking up what we could, where we could.
Let's first talk about phone records.
Okay.
You're familiar with phone records as they exist today, cell phone records and
Yes.
things like that. Was there something different about the phone records as we talk about them back in 2000 versus where we are today?
Yes, it's a lot different. Begin with, we didn't have the little computer we all hold today. Back then maybe you had a flip phone, but the text messaging was a lot different. There was no computer screen there to type on, so what you could get was different. It was emerging. There was no, I think, landlines and stuff. You could only get long distance stuff. You couldn't, and so there's a lot that was not available then that is available now.
Okay. Talk about the landlines. Would the phone records exist between local calls of landlines?
No.
Okay. Only long distance?
Yes.
Did you take steps to get phone records back then?
Yes.
What step did you take?
We wrote up subpoenas. We did get some phone records for more recent stuff, but trying to go back to the 2000 date range, they only keep the records for so long. So after about 7 years, I think it was 7 years, they purge all the records.
And were you outside that time frame?
Yes.
Did you go back and try and look for items that had possibly been seized by law enforcement, specifically FWC, waiters, jackets, things along those lines?
Yes, we started trying to, at a point, trying to collect all this stuff and gather it into, one spot, one location, because it was kind of, at that time, it was a missing voter at one point, and there was a suspicious of whether he was in the lake or not. And so we made a decision we needed to start to gather everything together in case things started to change.
And were you able to find any of those items?
Some of them.
What were you able to find?
I think we found the boat. I believe we found the boat. I may be incorrect on that. We did not find the waiters. We found a copy, I believe, of the, I'm trying to remember back now what all we've actually found. There were bits and pieces of clothing, small things, nothing too substantial.
You ever find the waiters?
No, we never found the waiters.
Jacket?
No.
Okay. You mentioned the boat. did you,
That was never recovered. It was never put in impounded or seized for whatever reason.
what do you mean?
I don't believe the boat was ever, and I could be incorrect there, but I don't think we had it. We didn't have, what I mean to say is we didn't have it to process it, I guess, in that manner.
Okay, so it wasn't seized initially, but you may have come back and recovered it?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Did you also take steps to get the certified copies of death certificates in the petition to get that?
Yes, we did.
Showing as previously marked as states composite 7, A, B, and C. I should take a look at that. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What do those appear to be?
There's a petition for presumptive death certificate, an order for presumptive death certificate, and a certificate of death.
Your Honor, this time I'd move certified copies of the petition of those items into evidence as self-authenticating documents as Exhibit 7, A, B, and C.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
7A, B, and C will be admitted.
Now, Mr. Sparkman, what is the date of that petition for death certificate?
Looks like it was signed on June 29th, 2001.
Roughly 6 months after Mr. Williams went missing?
Yes, that would be correct.
During the course of your investigation, did you also learn of a possible insurance payout to Denise Williams?
Yes, we did.
And did that also heighten your suspicions as it relates to the manner of death?
Yes.
Showing the previously marked statement exhibit number 8.
You may.
Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What does that item appear to be?
It's a marriage certificate for Brian Winchester and Denise Williams.
This time I move state's exhibit number 8 into evidence as a self-authenticating certified copy.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted.
And what is that again?
The marriage certificate for Brian Winchester and Denise Williams.
Denise Williams?
Yes.
And what's the date of that?
The date on that one is, it's like, the date license issue was November 11, 2000, or November 11th, or November 23rd, 2005, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
In looking at that marriage certificate, does it show the date of marriage?
Date of marriage, yes.
What is that date?
December 3rd, 2005.
13 days from the date of the anniversary of Michael Williams going missing, correct?
Correct. Yes.
No further questions.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Investigator Sparkman.
Good afternoon.
Your involvement in this case began, I believe you testified, several years after the disappearance of Mike Williams. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
Because isn't it true you were, if I recall correctly, you were in the FWC Academy at the time of the disappearance in 2000?
Yes.
So when we're talking about time frames on some of these things, would it be fair to say that there's quite a number of years between some of the events that you just testified to, as many as 5 years, and as we sit here today, as many as almost 18 years from the disappearance, correct?
Yes.
During the course of your investigation, you learned that Brian Winchester and Denise Williams had gone to school together, correct?
Correct.
In fact, they'd gone to kindergarten together as three-year-olds.
I believe so.
Yeah.
What I've heard.
They'd known each other almost their entire lives.
Seems so.
Make sure you speak to the microphone, Mr. Investigator Sparkman, so we can hear you, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry, could you repeat
Yes,
the answer?
I would seem so.
And you were also aware, based on your investigation, that both Mike Williams and Kathy, now Kathy Thomas at the time, Kathy Aldridge, all attended North Florida Christian together, correct?
Yes.
And they went to college together, correct?
I don't know about the college,
But from the time that they graduated from high school, they were, and even before, they were close friends.
it would seem so, yes.
And as it at least relates to Mr. Winchester and Ms. Williams, they'd known each other for quite a significant amount of time.
Yes.
Now, you testified earlier about the issue of something becoming a suspicious death.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that in your line of work, a spouse in a missing person or homicide is generally always a suspect?
Yes.
That's something you learn almost day one on missing persons homicides. Suspect is very closely tied to being a principal suspect.
Well, yeah, you look at them.
I'm probably going to need you to speak up a little bit,
I'm not
please,
getting close enough.
Investigator Sparkman.
Okay, yes.
That's okay. As it related to the death certificate that you just testified to, you were, in the course of your investigation, you looked into the procurement of the certificate of death in 2001, correct?
Yes.
You've also reviewed, and it's been introduced into evidence, the death certificate, correct?
Correct?
You've seen death certificates before, correct?
Yes.
You can also get a death certificate that says homicide,
Yes.
and that can generally be issued much quicker once a person is determined to have been murdered. Is that your experience and understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically, no.
Well, as it relates to the exhibit that was just introduced in terms of the obtaining the death certificate, had you ever seen one of those petitions before?
A petition for death?
No, the petition to obtain a death certificate in the particular circumstances we're dealing with here,
No.
where someone's missing.
No.
Never seen one of those before.
No.
During the course of your investigation, did you learn that's a very rare and very difficult process to utilize to obtain a presumptive death certificate?
I've never seen one, so I would expect it to be rare.
Haven't seen one since either, have you?
No.
In the time frame that we're talking about, just so that we're clear, when Mike Williams went missing, President of the United States of America was Bill Clinton.
You're testing my history.
Well, you remember that around this time in December of 2000, we had the Bush-Gore issues.
Yes.
Essentially have consumed this entire courthouse, as a matter
Yes.
of record. The time that we're talking about in terms of when this marriage certificate was obtained is 2005. To the best of your recollection, is President George W. Bush the president at that point in time?
Yes.
Quite a long period of time had actually had gone from when the missing fisherman or missing hunter, Mike Williams, went hunting to the time that this wedding took place in December of 2005.
I guess it'd be about 5 years.
About 5 years. And in the intervening period of time from the 5 years, did you, in the course of your investigation, discover that Miss Williams had been involved in a romantic relationship with one Charles Bunker?
Yes, we did.
And when was that time frame?
I don't know the exact date on that.
But it was prior to 2005, correct?
Correct.
And it was a longer-term relationship. It may have been over several years. Do you recall that?
I don't recall the exact amount of time on it, but I do know there was a relationship.
Okay. And it was a relationship of a personal nature,
As far as we know, yes.
and they were dating.
Yes.
And when you say as far as we know, did you ever interview Charles Bunker?
I personally did not.
You had indicated earlier in some of your questioning about what raised your suspicion was insurance. In your experience as an investigator 18 years, do you believe that life insurance pays out when someone is believed to have passed away?
As far as I've seen, yes.
I mean, the purpose of having life insurance may be to pay out in the event of untimely demise.
Yes.
So the fact that a life insurance policy is paid is not in particularly anything that makes you suspicious.
The payment of it, no.
During the course of your investigation, did you determine that Brian Winchester worked for his father, Marcus Winchester?
Yes.
And what kind of work did they do?
Insurance sales.
And during the course of your investigation into the insurance sales, were you able to determine whether or not Marcus Winchester and Brian Winchester had a good business? Were they selling lots of policies?
As far as we could tell, yes.
Okay. And do you know if they sold a policy to other friends and family from the time that they went to North Florida Christian?
That I don't know.
But it wasn't uncommon for you to see that Marcus or Brian Winchester had sold insurance policies to people.
Yeah, no, it was not.
And you knew that from your investigation that Brian Winchester and Mike Williams were very close friends.
Yes.
During the course of your investigation, were you able to determine whether or not on Friday, December 15th, 2000, the day before Mike Williams went missing, were you able to determine whether or not Brian Winchester and his wife Kathy Winchester and Denise Williams and her husband Mike Williams traveled to Thomasville, Georgia for the Victorian Christmas?
Sustained.
When you talked about phone records, in the period of time, you talked about 7 years being a date that seemed to be a range that you could go back. So what year would you have begun looking for phone records?
I started I tried to get those at, I think it was about 8 years after the death, so it would have been 2008.
All right, so you didn't begin to start looking for records until 2008.
Not for those records, no. It was a suspicious or a missing person up until that point, and they had started gathering, and it was one of those things that decided we should try and get those also.
Do you know where Miss Williams was working in, say, 2000, prior to the disappearance? Do you know where she worked?
No, I did not.
Do you know where you knew Mr. Winchester was working for his father. Mm-hmm. So you never went back to Miss Williams' employer to check to see if they had phone records or anything that would indicate whether there were any calls or communications with anyone?
If there were local calls, we would not have had any information on them anyway.
Well, let me ask you a question. You say that with some certainty that you wouldn't have known, but what if someone had called to ask and left a message? Did you go back and look for hard message pads?
No, I did not.
Did you go back and look for any in-office routing or anything that would suggest, hey, you got a phone call from so-and-so?
No.
Did you ever obtain any credit card receipts or anything that would suggest that there was any communication or anything between Mr. Winchester and Miss Williams for, say, the time period of 2000?
No. We tried to get the financial records, but they were also purged.
Well, I mean, did you go and just beat the grass and look for eyewitnesses?
That's what our investigation was.
But you didn't find any, did you?
Not on that aspect, no. We didn't.
When you were involved in the investigation, Investigator Sparkman, you were at that time with the State Attorney's Office, correct?
Correct.
Were there other agencies that were involved with the investigation as you understood it?
Yes.
And those agencies include the Florida Department of Law Enforcement,
They were one of them.
the Jackson County Sheriff's Office,
Yes.
the Department of Financial Services,
Yes.
the United States Government Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Service.
Yes.
Is there anyone I missed?
No, not at that time.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Way asked you about the life insurance policies, not suspicious in themselves. That's what life
Not in
insurance.
themselves, no.
Life insurance policies, that's what they do, correct?
Yes.
Okay. He also asked you some questions about certificate of death. It's a lot easier to get on a homicide, correct?
Yes.
It would be fair to say that when you have a homicide, you typically have a body
Correct.
that would show the person that's dead.
Yes.
In this particular case, we did not.
We did not.
And the steps that we're taking, as Mr. Way pointed out, that a declaration or certificate for death in a missing person is a rare circumstance.
Yes.
In fact, you've never seen it.
No.
So, in other words, Ms. Williams took great length and went to great length and took a lot of steps in order to get this particular death certificate.
Correct.
And you can't get a life insurance payout for death unless you have a death certificate, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One of the other questions that was asked has to do with the spouse is always looked at on a homicide initially.
Yes.
During your training experience in 18 years of law enforcement, one of those things is someone who is known to the missing person or the deceased person is a suspect, correct?
Yes.
What is another aspect that is looked at as it relates to finding out the motive behind a killing?
Oh, I mean, one of the things is the old adage of follow the money. And you see who benefits, where the motives are.
Follow the money and follow the person that knows them,
Yes.
the spouse.
Correct.
No further questions.
All right, any juror have a question of this witness? All right, you can step down. We keep him subject to recall. All right, you be subject to recall. Well, we take 10 minutes. Let the jury step out. Either side, anything.
There you go.
Okay.